WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
This isn't going to be a surprise to many of you, but data rules business. What that means for big businesses isn't a surprise. We know that some big businesses like Amazon, Google, Facebook, they know a lot of our behavior, and it shows because we see some advertisements before we even know that we're interested in a specific product. That's not by accident. And this is something that has been the domain of the big Fortune 1000 companies for a long time. What most people don't realize, today's environment, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, the game has changed. Not only is it that we have access to some of this data that was unapproachable or unusable before, we are sitting on a potential gold mine and wealth of information of data that's available for us to use, and in some cases, maybe for others to be able to utilize. Today's guest is Jim Cripps, and if that name is familiar to you, Jim has been with us before as given some information to us as a coach, but today he's talking about it through one of his businesses, and data is a big part of his business. So this is a great conversation that Dennis and I had with Jim, and I think this is something you guys will definitely learn something from. So don't sleep on this one. Take a listen. I think that if anything can be said about what we're producing nowadays, Dennis, it's not necessarily products or services that we kind of think about, um, our businesses. There's a lot more to it than just that part of the business.
Yeah, I mean, there's I live in the world of data and information, and I would say people are data rich and information poor because they never take it and turn it into anything. And they're sitting on a gold mine with a lot of stuff, and they get busy. One of our podcasts last week was the Yow But. They do this one because Yow But I'm busy, or Yow But Susie doesn't know how to look at this data, or Yow But I don't have systems that support all this stuff. And they come up with all these reasons why, and it's right there at their fingertips. And everybody's always trying to figure out how to get more business, how to reach customers in a different way. AI is going to probably help change a lot of that for us here in the near future.
Yeah, and so today we're going to have an expert in this field, and this name's going to be familiar to you if you've listened to our podcast before. Jim, you've been on our podcast before. Jim, welcome back.
Well, thanks, guys. It's great to be back in the studio with you guys. And, I love that what we've talked about in the past has resonated with your listeners. And thanks again for having me back on.
Yeah.
Jim's been on before, and he's talked in terms of being able to coach other business owners, but you don't get that experience by not being a business owner. And Jim is an entrepreneur in the truest sense of the word. So what we're going to talk about today is not about the coaching side of his business, but this is about something I think a little bit more interesting to me. And I have to say, we had a little conversation just before our recording here, and I am completely enamored with this whole topic. So this is something near and dear to my heart.
Benny will do most of the talking here probably on this one
Yeah.
today.
Well, it's funny because we talked about data, and when we think about data is kind of this amorphous blob. It's a generic term I say. It's an amorphous blob of stuff, right? And it can have anything associated with it. It can be everything from behavior, or it can be the amount of inventory that a company keeps. It could be as something as the color of your eyes. That's all data. And for the most part, when we think about our businesses, we're talking about the products that we create. We're talking about the services that we provide. But Jim pointed out that's not the case. Jim, data is part of what we produce. And you got to tell me more about this.
Well, it absolutely is. And I think on a previous episode, I think I probably said something to the effect of, I had spent over $1 million on Facebook ads. And in the beginning, that was really tough because you're committing to spending $5,000 to $10,000 a week on Facebook. And that was at our scale. That's what we were doing. And in the beginning, it's like you're spending that money every week. But when we leveraged it with the data in order to be able to connect the sales back to the actual lead that came from that advertising, then you notice that for every dollar you put in, you get how much back. And really, the last 3 or 4 years of that, we treated it like a cash machine because I knew for every dollar I put in, I could get $1.90 back. Well, when you've got that kind of data, it's not like you're spending 250 or 300 to $500,000 a year. You're really spending it one time and you get it back to spend the next week, and you get it back to spend the next week. But if you never use the data to connect back to what is working and what is not, then you just feel like you're spending this enormous amount of money on marketing or whatever it is that you're spending it on. But if you leverage the data to understand what's working, what's not working, then you're going to be able to hone that in. You're going to get better at it. And at the same time, especially if you have a board or if you have multiple owners, when you can show that data so that it's not like we're wasting money here, because everybody's propensity is, oh, well, let's cut that so that we can make more money. Well, if you stop the funnel of stuff coming in, well, then it's eventually going to dry up. And a lot of people make that mistake. But, we really didn't have any inclination that we were going to become data experts. That's not really, what we set out to do. But as we were working, coaching, and helping people optimize their businesses, just this reoccurring theme kept coming up. One, either they didn't have enough data. Two, they were collecting it but not doing anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
Three, they didn't understand the value of it. And then sometimes I was just blown away in that somebody would just have a stack of paperwork and that was their data, which meant they were doing absolutely nothing with it. And they were kind of recreating the wheel every week or every month, going out to get new customers, as opposed to leveraging the people that they had already not just satisfied, but really went above and beyond for, that would be glad to recommend them or refer them or buy again.
I think that's a common theme that we see across many companies that we deal with, because they're usually really good at something they do, but sales may not be the thing they're really good at. And so,
when it's not,
and then, they've gotten business because who they are, but at some point they kind of level off. And to your point, if they could take that data and do something with it, they could grow exponentially and make life a lot easier for themselves versus just throwing money out there. Or a lot of them think that, hey, if I throw more salespeople out there, just knocking on doors, that's going to work. Well, you might be able to do it with the same number of salespeople and focus on the houses that are red, because the red houses buy more than the white houses.
That's right. Well, and that's where understanding your data really comes to play is, a lot of people will describe their average customer. I don't want them to describe their average customer. I want them to describe their best customer, who buys over and over and is excited to do business with you. And then we need to distill down from there and go, okay, how do we find more of those people? Because it's the difference in being very targeted versus just almost at random.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to spend money on marketing, I don't need to spend it random. I need to spend it getting in touch with people who are going to be excited about doing business with me, and that I can accurately understand what they want and over deliver so that everybody wins.
This probably comes as no surprise to any of the listeners, and certainly not anyone here, but companies like Walmart, Target, Ford, McDonald's, they take all of the data and they're able to turn that into usable data sets that can create perfect locations to put my restaurant, knowing exactly when to stock specific product, knowing where to put the product in my store. These are all not done by accident. This is all using data. And I think, Jim, one of the things I'm hearing you say is that even us as a small business, if I'm a manufacturing company and maybe I do a few $1 million a year, there's data to be had in terms of what my customer behaviors might be, or what I need to be, what products seem to be being asked for and all that stuff. This is a lot of stuff that I'm just a manufacturing company owner. I don't know any of this stuff. This is all stuff that we should be taking a look at.
Absolutely taking a look at it, but taking it a step further in analyzing it and documenting it. And AI, for everybody out there that is afraid of AI, I kind of liken it to, and I forget who told me this, but they compared it to when the tractor came out. And so you had farmers that had farm hands, and they were afraid that the tractor was going to cost their farm hands their job, or that a tractor was too dangerous, and they didn't buy a tractor. Well, fast forward, those people no longer own farms, and the guy that bought the tractor now has 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres. And it's just a tool. And small businesses, instead of being scared of it, I really feel like they're doing themselves a disservice by not at least being interested enough to say, what's one thing I could put in place? A good example of that would be some restaurants are leveraging AI so that when you call, you get an AI agent and they book your reservation. And just to be clear on what that is for everybody that is maybe inexperienced with that, it is an AI voice that sounds very human, but is clearly not human. It takes just a moment for it to respond, but it will ask you the questions in order to book your reservation. It has access to the calendar or the reservation sheet for the restaurant. It books it, and you get your confirmation. And it didn't involve any people. Well, now that business can handle more customers because that same person that was on the phone answering all the time can now focus on other things. So, and that's just a restaurant. There's every type of business out there. There's so many different types of AI. There's so many different products out there. I just want people to be open-minded enough in order to take one small step and see if there's something that can help you do something better. And an easy place to start is reservations or data, or just pick one little part.
Right. No, you're exactly right.
And start.
I mean, and sales is another great one if you've got a sales team, because a lot of the people are just saying, how here's a list, go figure it out. Well, if you could do something with that list and make it much more productive to know that this list has 100,000 people on it, but there's only probably 4,000 of them that really are good candidates for what we do. And those 4,000 are a higher probability of saying yes. You can then, your salesperson can be much more productive. You get a win, they get a win. I mean, nobody wants to be in sales and not be able to sell. I mean, they don't do it just to call on people to have them say no, or they don't do it just to network and get to know people. They're in it because they want to make money. And so it's like, okay, how do you remove those obstacles? Benny, you were talking about on the food side. I mean, AI has been here a long time. We just didn't call it AI, but when you go through the grocery store scanner, yeah, it rings up your price, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes about inventory, your buying habits. Why do you think you get certain coupons that pop up? Why do you get certain emails and all that stuff? Because it knows that, okay, every time Dennis goes, he buys mushrooms and tomatoes for the salad, and maybe if they threw a coupon in there for cucumbers, I'd add cucumbers the next time, and they want to increase cucumber sales. So it's that kind of stuff behind the scenes that it's doing for you to make. And the big companies, to your point, they've got it. But Jim, my thought is they're probably not as flexible, and they're kind of hamstrung, where the little companies, you've got a lot more flexibility and you can test and try and move around. To me, AI is a great win for the small business. Big businesses probably are actually scared of if you're a good small business, what you can do with AI.
Yeah, an analogy that I give people is a smaller business can operate like a speedboat, and that you can pivot and you can make some pretty significant changes if you need to. Whereas a big business is really more like a cruise ship. And if I turn the wheel too hard in a cruise ship, everybody gets seasick. And so a small business may be able to leverage AI to all of a sudden now they're playing in a bigger league, or they're doing more with what they have. And kind of back to your point about how some of these businesses, whether it's McDonald's or whatever, they're using their data in order to make business decisions. I'll give you a crazy one. So now it's been a long time since I had one, but McDonald's has the McRib. So a friend of mine, his dad was head of the pork council. And the reason that the McRib is it's not even seasonal. The reason that it just comes out at certain times is because in the beginning, the McRib was such a hot seller that they leveraged it to balance the market. So whenever supply got too high with pork and prices fell, they would all of a sudden, okay, McDonald's, McRib's coming out next week, and it would balance the market. But it was in these big swings. And so if you're leveraging your data, then you get faster indicators, or you can understand that there was something that happened, whether it was, let's just say there was an outbreak of some type of illness that killed off a certain part of the supply, or
like chickens chickens and eggs. I mean,
exactly. And so it would, by leveraging data, you can put in these variables and you can do that faster. Well, AI is so much faster at that.
Yeah.
And even if I'm a business owner, and let's just say I only have 2 or 3 employees, at the very minimum, take the stuff that you do that you don't tell everybody. Maybe it's how you calculate commissions. Maybe it's what you do on a daily basis in order to get open and ready your store, whatever that looks like. Drop that into AI and then put that into a file somewhere so that if something happened to you, somebody could follow step by step and the business wouldn't collapse. And I say that because in a very real sense, I was contacted maybe 3 months ago, and this was a company that's been around for 60 years, has 30 plus employees, and the owner, who was in charge of all those things, including how all the people got paid, how he calculated commissions and everything. He takes a customer, walks a customer out, and then is just seen walking around in circles outside. And one of his employees raised the alarm and said, "Hey, something's wrong." Turns out he had a brain tumor, and just like that, he went from fine to not knowing who he was or where he was. The business almost ceased to exist because nobody knew how to calculate commissions or pay people.
Yep.
Because it was only in his head. And, God rest his soul, luckily he didn't last very long in that state. But I was just cringing, and I offered, I said, for free, I will come down and help.
Yeah.
Because they were just beside themselves
No.
on what to do. And how easy it would have been for him to just, and he didn't know what he didn't know, right? But hopefully some of your listeners are listening to this and they're going, you know what? There's plenty of things that nobody knows that I do. Or if I was gone tomorrow, and you can just drop that into AI and print it out or send it or email it, or I tell business owners to create their Bible, which is everything to do with your business, how it's done, who to call, even if the plumbing backs up, who's the guy?
Right.
And that kind of goes into, kind of one of my baselines is always be running your business as if it was going to be sold tomorrow, so that you can enjoy that comfort as well. So,
No, that's really important. And I think that everybody needs to know that these things are available. People don't know, AI being so overwhelming and what it can do. I think a lot of people, just like to your point earlier, Jim, they're just kind of afraid of it. And so I just don't want to play around with it. I don't know it, but it really can be a lifesaver. So let me kind of flip this on here. We've got a tremendous amount of data. We've talked about how the big companies are using this. We've all experienced it. Maybe we thought about buying, we were thinking about buying a new car, and suddenly you start seeing that advertisement on your feed, right? On your, and that's not by mistake.
No.
That's the type of stuff that we have a tendency to believe that's only the domain of big companies, Jim. That's really not the case anymore today. That data being so prevalent, and what you mentioned, you talked about AI and some of the advancements we've had in technology, even us small business owners, we have the ability to do this. I don't think most people know this. I know that you kind of open up my eyes, but talk a little bit about what can be done and what's available out there.
Yeah. So, and I told you guys before, when we were doing a lot of management consulting, I had no desire or no inclination that we were going to basically become a data warehouse or a data analyst in any regard. But we just kept running into this where people either didn't have enough data or they didn't know what to do with their data, even their their current customers. And there's some really cool things that AI is making possible. And so, a lot of people have probably heard about how they're going to use it in healthcare to kind of put all your information in and your regular blood tests and that kind of stuff, and be able to kind of predict that this may be going wrong with you. It's not something we would find right now, but you're leading in that path. The same thing is true with business data, in that, yes, I can take someone that is, let's just say they're trying to, they want to do some marketing. I don't want to know what their average customer is. I want to know what their ideal customer is, because I can get that granular, so that then you're only marketing to people that you're going to wow, or that are really in love with what you're about to show them. And then it gets even crazier than that. So a service, and sorry for the plug here, but we're just so excited about the idea of this. Something we're going to be offering in the very near future is where you could give me your customer data. I'll upload your customer data, and then you could be notified. Let's just say Dennis is a current customer. You could be notified when Dennis is thinking about leaving or thinking about buying something new. And then you can proactively reach out and go, Dennis, hey, wanted to follow up. How do you like your Honda? Oh, I like it. I'm thinking about going with something more luxurious, blah, blah. Great, great. We've got our sister store, which is an Acura, and that Pilot that you got. We have a fantastic new MDX that just came out, completely redesigned. So you could absolutely find new clients. You could also preserve the relationship and know when that relationship is in jeopardy, or when a new buying action is about to happen, to make sure that you can leverage that relationship and keep them a customer.
That is wild. I mean, because so many people focus on that new customer,
Mm-hmm.
but if you focused on your existing customers of keeping them, and also, can you grow relationships? Can you get me to buy a second car? Because maybe I have
Absolutely.
a Honda and maybe I have a Ford. And so, hey, there's ways to keep me and get me to expand, or, all kinds of different business approaches. So, I mean, there's just so many different things you can do with the data. And I think, to your earlier point, the problem is many people are scared, and that you don't have to be scared with this. There are tools, there are groups, there's people that can help you navigate through this, and just pick one little thing and get a win. And once you see the win, you can begin to add to it. You don't need to solve world hunger,
That's
but,
right.
that's where I think companies that are thinking outside the box are going to be really successful moving forward with AI.
Well, another thing that I want to just dispel is, a lot of people are in the mindset of, I'm too old, or I don't know anything about that. To give you an idea, my dad, he's neck deep in the veteran community, and he was the first person to ever prove inside the United States exposure to Agent Orange. It was classified data, and he proved it to the point where they had to declassify it. And we were talking. This is probably 10 months ago, and 10 months in AI world is like a lifetime. And he was saying, I've got this friend that's a veteran, and we're going to have a legal briefing in order to move his case forward. And I said, well, why don't you use AI? And he very quickly just kind of laughed it off. No, that's not me. I'm gonna have to get a lawyer involved, blah, blah, blah. So I'm at my laptop. I just pull up, I'm using AI, and I'm just asking him questions. All the questions that the lawyer would ask. He has no idea what I'm doing. I'm just being an inquisitive son. And I said, okay, well, check your email. I put the legal briefing in your inbox. And he laughed. And I said, no. Why do you think I asked all these questions over the last 25 minutes? The legal briefing is in your inbox. He spent almost 2 weeks trying to tear that legal briefing down. And he called me back and he goes, I need you to teach me how to do this because it's 90% there. He goes, it even cited cases that it took me days to find. That's my dad. And he's 76 years old now, and he's leveraging AI to help him help other people.
Yeah.
You're not too old. If you are willing to take a small action and be open-minded, there is so much that you can do.
To me, this is a perfect example of what the technology and leveraging, AI and being able to use those to our advantages today. Look, if you started your business in the 80s or 90s and you're used to just cold calling, knocking on doors, doing the traditional type of stuff because that's worked for you, well, I hate to say this, but your competitors aren't doing that, and they're using data and leveraging AI to be able to get to your customers before you can even knock on the door. And this is where you as a business owner, it's a responsibility for you to take a look at this because I think it's important. And this is something to me, the natural progression of where we have to be. And I think there's just so much more that we can get out of it. And we're just at the beginning stages, aren't we, Jim? And we don't know what this is going to look like.
Absolutely right. We are in the infancy of this. But to kind of speak to those people you're talking about that started their businesses in their 80s or 90s, or in the 80s or 90s, a lot of those people are looking at retirement. They're not too far from figuring out if they're going to sell their business, if they're going to close their business. And I just want to be point blank with them in that you need to be working on these things, because if I was to come in and buy your business tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to do is leverage AI in order to increase the profitability of that company. The first thing. So why wouldn't you be selfish enough and selfless enough, because you can take better care of your employees. If I can get you to be selfish and selfless at the same time, and that's what you do when you do this when you get outside of your comfort zone and you create a better business so that you can take better care of your employees, so you can take better care of your customers. You're doing both at the same time, selfish and selfless. Anytime I'm operating, or I can get somebody to operate in that mode where the most selfish thing they can do and the most selfless thing they can do is the same thing, oh my gosh, amazing things happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
You're leaving money on the table if you don't do that. That's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. Because that's the first thing I'm going to do in a private equity turnaround. I am going to leverage AI in order to make that thing really make money and take better care of people.
Oh.
Really, the big thing just is, people get stuck in a rut because this is how they've done it. And I want people to understand there's a difference between a rut and a groove. A groove is success. Success is the difference. A rut is just me doing what I've done forever, and I'm just getting by. A groove is me getting comfortable being uncomfortable and kind of pushing the envelope to take better care of my people, to take better care of my customers, to then take better care of myself. And data is absolutely the way to do that. It's not the only piece of it, but it is a huge part of it.
Jim, this is obviously a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I love this. I think I could talk to you about this for hours, but we can't, unfortunately. So there are going to be people who also are going to be probably as passionate or interested to know a little bit more about my data as a business owner, and maybe what you can potentially help me out with data that you might have. What's the best way for people to be able to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you two different websites. So Sense Custom is the website for Sense Development, and that's really kind of where the business started in the management consulting and that type of space. And then if it's somebody that's specifically interested in data, then that website is sense-leads.com. And we're in data in a big way, and it's just going to grow really almost by the day. And then you can always just reach out to me directly, 615-268-5627.
All right. And that's Sense, S-E-N-S-E, right? That's how
Yes,
you
sir.
spell it. Okay. All right. So for anyone out there who's interested, give Jim a call. Reach out to him, and I'm sure he'd be glad to talk to you more about this. But Jim, thank you so much for stopping by today. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot that I learned here on this one.
Absolutely. Well, Dennis, Benny, thank you so much for your hospitality, inviting me on again. It's always great to connect with your listeners.
Awesome. Jim, thanks a lot.
Great to see you. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Well, Dennis, that's another podcast in the can. I know that a lot of you all want to know how to get in touch with us. Dennis, what's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's by far the best for me. It's Dennis J, so DENNISJ at worksolution.com, and that's WORX solution, no S at the end, so solution.com. Benny, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Get a hold of me. My email address is benny@velocitytechnology.group. That's BENNY at velocitytechnology.group. Also, for me and Dennis, you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for us on LinkedIn. Work from Home with Two Guys is on LinkedIn. And we also have a website, WFH2guys.com. Look us up. You'll find all the past episodes and some little bits of information that maybe we don't get a chance to talk to on the podcast. We put it out there too as well.
And definitely share us with your friends and people in your network.
Absolutely. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast your podcast. Give us some ideas. And if you'd like to be a guest, let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.